Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders airsoft podcast. Hello, everyone. In today's episode, I will be talking about the upcoming American Milsim event, Ironhorse 6, and the Storm Riders Foreign Legion's attendance at that event. I'm going to be giving you an update on what we're doing, some organizational stuff that we're actually looking forward to. We'll be name dropping a few community members, and I'm going to be giving you just an overview as well into what my gear setup is going to look like, what my training block is also going to look like heading into the event. So I hope you love the show today. Tickets for Ironhorse 6 went on sale last week at the time of recording of the podcast. And while this was super exciting, I had a reminder on my phone and everything. I was, checking the page. They basically, all the 48 hours leading up to it, the tickets going on sale. It also came with some pretty significant changes and little notice. And I'll talk about that in a second. So as I mentioned, I was checking the AMS site basically religiously that day and the days leading up, just hitting refresh basically. You all know how it is when you're really excited about something and there's a deadline, it's just refreshing. So I was checking the site religiously, and that day, about 2 hours before the tickets were supposed to go on sale, the ticket sale page actually went live. So you could go in, you could look at the event details, and you could try to add tickets, but you couldn't actually buy any tickets at the time. Maybe it was for like pre-sale or something. I don't really know. But at that time, I noticed that the date of the event appeared to be wrong. So AMS had advertised this event for June 7 and 8 of 2024. And that's not the date that was on the sale page and on the tickets. So I was a little bit concerned, but I wrote AMS and I sent them an email. I basically asked about the mistake, right? And as it turned out, it was not a mistake. So despite originally having firstly moved Ironhorse from when it usually is in the year at the start of the year, so like February or March, which it had been in previous years, they actually moved it to June 7 and 8. And then on the go live date, they actually forced another date change to June 29 and 30th. So this was actually a bit of an issue for me since coming from Newfoundland. I had already bought and paid for all of my travel. It costs a lot of money to travel out of Newfoundland. And so the sooner you book, the cheaper the rates that you can get. So as soon as I knew that the dates had been moved and we had confirmed dates from AMS, I prepared on my travel for that. That's my mistake. I won't make it again, but there it is. So that was one thing that happened. And then the second thing that happened is that AMS threw us a curveball in that Ironhorse 6 would feature 3 teams, not the 2 teams you typically see. And those 3 teams would be Cost, so green team, versus Sierra Dynamics, which is the black team, and Civilian Defense Force, or CDF. Our original plan was to play as UFS, which is the tan team. So when I designed the Storm Riders Foreign Legion logo, I designed one version with the tan colors, or the tricolor desert colors from the American Desert Combat uniform. And so I had the patches made with that color in mind. And so not only did we have to pivot to new dates as a group, we also had to quickly decide, again as a group, which side we wanted to change to. And ultimately, we landed on Civilian Defense Force, on CDF. Because firstly, we figured it would be tough for everyone to get space on Cost, the green team. So obviously, all of us or most of us have green gears. So that would have been the easiest pivot gear-wise. But we figured that most people would want to go with Cost because most people have green gear and black is so much more specific. And generally, if you're playing airsoft, you probably don't want to go the civilian route, which was sort of our first reaction, let's call it. So we didn't really want to go with Cost because we figured that those would sell out more quickly. And since we wanted to stick as a group, we wanted to make sure everyone was able to get tickets sort of right out the gate. We also had decided to go with UFS because we wanted to stick with our original. We wanted to stick with someone who is actually familiar with one of our squad leaders. So Sam, one of our squad leaders, we'll talk about a bit later, is well acquainted with the CO of UFS, whose name is Rich. So we know Rich. Rich knows us, not me personally, but like as a unit. So we wanted to stick with him. And it turns out that despite having no UFS, he's also the CO for CDF. So it actually worked out perfectly in that respect. So we're not going cost, we're going CDF, and we're still going to be able to stick with Rich, which is sort of why we went with UFS in the first place. So everyone was able to get their tickets, and we could stick with Rich. So that was great. As a side note, I just want to illustrate or talk a little bit on the fact that many of you might know this. If you've been to Ironhorse before, you definitely know this. Ironhorse is held at a huge training center for military, law enforcement, and first responders called the Guardian Center. American Milsim is certainly one of Guardian's smaller clients, let's call it, especially when you compare American Milsim to, I don't know, the American Department of Defense. That's probably a huge contract. So I absolutely understand that AMS kind of have to bend to the will, I guess, of the Guardian Center when it comes to event dates. If they have an event in mind like Ironhorse and it's June 7 and 8, but tickets aren't on sale yet, and the government comes around and says, hey, can you move this event? Chances are they're going to have to say yes. So, like, having to change your date on the actual date that the tickets go live is absolutely a possibility, and it's just really unlucky that that happened, and I definitely don't hold them responsible for that. Like, they've said they were bumped, and it's 100% conceivable, believable, and truly I don't think is outside of the realm of the possible. That said, I do think that the way that they handled it could have been improved a little bit. And I would have liked to see them sort of delay ticket sales, maybe by 24 hours, to give larger teams like ours a bit of time to, think about, okay, what do we want to do? How are we feeling about this without having to rush? When they made the announcement, or when we realized that the dates had changed, a lot of us on the Foreign Legion jumped on a call, and we were talking for about an hour trying to figure out, okay, do we still want to do this? What are our options? What is this going to look like? Are we cool with it? Especially considering, as I'll talk about in a second, like the number of people who are coming and where they're coming from. Like, this was a pretty big deal. And it would have been nice to be able to take some time to consider our options, rather than having to rush to have a decision made as a group right before ticket sales went online to make sure that we could all get the tickets that we wanted to for the side that we wanted to. So that, given the format change, given the date change, I think it could have been a little bit better if they had delayed the ticket sale by a little bit of time, so that people could onboard the fact that the date at the time the format had changed, and then make a decision. I mean, at the end of the day, long story short, I've rebooked all of my travel. We've pivoted to CDF. And we're back on track. As a Foreign Legion, we're having the conversations, we're making some decisions, we're creating, I know Frosty for sure is like creating image boards and storyboards of like what the kit could look like, and we're all talking about options. Is it going to be flat tan pants? Talk about that in a second. Hawaiian shirts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're back on track. That was a very stressful Tuesday, but I'm glad it's behind us, and all my travel is rebooked. Cost me a little bit of extra money because flights are more expensive now because we're closer to the date than when I booked them originally. Yada yada, whatever. We'll figure it out. That's the least of my concern. We're going to Ironhorse. It's 100% confirmed now, and so super super excited. So when I say we are going to Ironhorse, firstly, I'm talking about John and myself. Those are the two Storm Riders who are confirmed going. It's just as a side note, it's a bit of a father-son trip. We're not father and son, but that's sort of that's sort of our sort of vibe together. But we're taking because this is an expensive trip. Like, we're taking a lot of time to go down and see some sites and do a bunch of stuff in addition to Ironhorse. But it's the two of us are going, and we are going to be joined by 19 other airsofters from all over the U.S., Canada, and even Frosty, who is joining us from Australia. So there are going to be 21, at the date of recording, 21 members of the Foreign Legion who are coming. Some of them who know us better than others, who are being brought perhaps by teammates. Talk about that in a sec. But yeah, so for us as a unit, it's going to be 21 people. For many of us, it's going to be probably the biggest airsoft trip we've ever had. And for a select few of us, it will not only be the first, but also probably one of the biggest trips of our lifetime in general. I know for myself, This is a huge commitment of resources. A huge amount of planning is going into this. Um, and this is, I'm not going to say that this is a once in a lifetime thing because I really would like to be able to do it again in future. But in terms of the amount of money that I'm investing into doing this, it certainly is. I'm looking at it as something that I'm going to do now, and I'm probably not going to get to do for many years to come. But if the YouTube channel explodes and I start making my living off it, different conversation. But given what the YouTube channel looks like in revenue and stuff, and just adult expenses, like yes, I'm on YouTube. Yes, we have a podcast. We have these conversations, but I'm very much a normal person who works a normal job, who earns a normal living. And so a huge expense like this is a treat. It's not something you're going to do all the time. So that being said, it's something that I'm very, very, very excited about. When we look at the layout of what this is going to look like for us. So number one, I mentioned there's 21 of us. That means that we will have 2 full squads on the Civilian Defense Force, right? 2 squads of Storm Riders Foreign Legion. We're going to get to roll together basically the entire time. And we have very experienced people running both of these teams. So on Squad 1, we have Sam, so Lazy Bear on the Discord. He's been on the podcast before. He's a very experienced team leader, squad leader for these types of events. And he's actually going to have me be his radio man, which is known as an RTO, a radio telephone operator. I think that's what it stands for. But fundamentally, I'm going to have both my team radio, but I'm also going to have a command radio that's assigned to me by AMS, by the cadre, so that I can communicate, relay information, etc. So that's going to be really cool. And I'll talk about that when I get to the more the gear and sort of the intent. But so it's going to be Sam and myself in Squad 1 as TL or squad lead and RTO. And Squad 2 is actually going to be led by Chris of Nomad Airsoft. And Chris has been on the podcast before. He is a former member of the United States military. I believe he was U.S. Army, if I'm not mistaken. Chris, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But Chris is going to be running Squad 2 along with Jimmy, so Nomad number 2 as his RTO. These are guys who have a lot of experience, both obviously in the real world, but they have experience with AMS games. They have experience running Milsim events. And so I'm really, really excited to have the benefit of their experience. But these are guys who are like, really cool. Like they're chill. They get along with everyone very easily. And they get the distinction between the fact that what we're doing here is not like real serious Milsim playtime, but it's like, no, we're going out there. We're trying to have a good time. We're trying to be very effective. We want to be dialed in and do the best that we can, but also not taking it too seriously and making sure that everyone around us has a good time. So I know that Chris and Jimmy are going to be able to do that for Squad 2, no question. In addition to that, we have 2 squad support gunners with LMGs on each squad, as well as a medic on each squad and a slew of riflemen. So we are going to be really well basically set up. Like we will have everything that we need to do. We will have a grenadier or heavy weapons guy on Squad 1 for sure, because Nick is going to take that role. And we have Steve running as medic on Squad 1. Squad 2, I'm not sure who will do that yet, but we'll have some conversations as we get there. The beauty of all of this is that we have a lot of experience on this team, right? And I don't mean not just on each squad, but like as holistically, we have a tremendous amount of experience in AMS games, experience in Milsim games, experience in objective-based play, experience in working with other people and collaborating with other players of different skill levels. I mean, if you think of a guy like Matt, for example, he brings his own wealth of experience and his own style. But fundamentally, he's, as we've talked about before, he's really good at just picking a random person and working with them. Well, that's essentially what we're going to be doing, but just in a more long-term sort of way. He also has the experience of showing up to a game with other airsofters from the Discord and sort of just plugging in with everyone and working towards an objective for that as well. So we have a lot of experience on this team, which is awesome because I got none, right? Like when it comes to AMS, obviously I've been playing airsoft a really long time, but when it comes to this type of event with 300 plus players and all kinds of stuff like that, I've never ever done that. So it's going to be really, really good to have all this experience around us. And it's a really good opportunity for players to learn, right? To learn from each other, to grow. to really see how other people who they are playing with really closely, how they're doing, how are they behaving, the small stuff, the big stuff, how are you opening a door, what does it look like when you get into cover, like what are they doing immediately, how can you replicate how they're behaving, the way that they hold their replica, the way that they come out of a corner, the way they're maybe slightly trying to improve their position over time, maybe when we're holding a position, for example. So it's a really good opportunity for everyone who's coming to learn from each other. I think the other thing is that because we are coming from all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different areas, and fundamentally, like, we're just internet acquaintances, aside from those of us who actually play with each other and we're bringing a buddy like the Nomad guys, or like me and John, or like the Operators, or something like that. Like, the vast majority of people, you don't really know them very well or at all. Which, we're hoping to remedy that by having lots of time to get to know each other and like all that stuff, which is great. But it's also a really good opportunity to see like how people you have no idea about, how do they play and what can you learn from each other, right? And if you listen to our content and you've watched it either on YouTube or on our videos, or you've listened to this podcast for a while, we're all about learning, right? We're all about seeing how can we be a little bit better than we were the last time we played, how can we push our knowledge a little bit further, right? And this is probably one of the best ways to do that, being surrounded by other people who are like-minded. So you might not know them specifically, you don't know their creed or their religion or none of that matters. What you know for sure is that they're a member of the Storm Riders Foreign Legion, which means they're here to have a good time, they're here to play, and they're here to learn and develop as much as they can, and they're here to do that in a supportive environment. That is basically our mantra. So what better opportunity, right, than to be surrounded by people who want the same thing that you want? And it's going to be amazing. And like, I don't want to make it sound like this is all going to be work. Like, this is going to be fun. We're going to be the civilian defense force, so it's going to be silly in some ways. Like, we're not going to be the try-hard guys who are like kitted out with all kinds. Like, we're just going to be wearing like regular civilian clothes with, by the way, like, in the middle of summer, at the height of summer in Georgia, where it's going to be hot, it's going to be nice to just be able to wear, like, I don't know, a normal t-shirt, right? As opposed to having to wear, like a full combat uniform or something like that. Like, it'll be cool, literally cooler, to be able to just wear regular civilian clothes that's meant to keep you cool in a hot environment. So that's going to be pretty cool. But it's really going to be, we're going to have, fun, silly times. And hopefully, because we know some of the people who are involved with the AMS, so I think about Rich, etc. Like, that will allow us, hopefully, to be as entrepreneurial on the field as we want to be, right? If we're in a situation where you have two squads sitting around, that's probably not going to be very good for CDF. I'm assuming Rich and the platoon leaders are going to want to put us to use, and we're going to be there anytime they want to put us to use. We will be ready to go, whatever that is. If they want us to hold an objective, we'll do that. They want us to take or assault an objective, we'll do that too. Doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is, we're going to be able to be as sort of, I use the word entrepreneurial, but basically jumped on every occasion we can to be as useful to our team as possible. So I'm really also looking forward to that. And I think with some of the limited interactions I've had with Rich, and some of our other members have had with Rich, I think he's also going to be looking forward to having a bunch of go-getters essentially ready to go in an already organized environment. It's one thing if you're a go-getter and it's like two of you, but when as a commander, you have two squads you can count on who are not going to bail, who are not going to leave before the index, all this kind of stuff, I think it's going to be really helpful for them. We are also taking the organization of this pretty seriously, because it's 21 people, right? So we want to make sure that everyone is as supported as they can be, and that they have everything we need. And if you recall, many episodes ago, we had Todd on the podcast. Todd is a member of the Airsoft of South Carolina group. He's a resident of South Carolina, which is not very far from Perry. And because of the heat, Todd didn't really want to play the event, which is absolutely understandable. But he still is going to be making the trip to provide on-the-ground support for us. So he's coordinating one of the lodgings that we have. We're looking at the different activities, sort of social activities that we can do, whether it's a cookout or whether it's a group dinner. We're going to figure that out as we get sort of closer to the event. But also fundamentally, Todd is going to be able to be there during the day at the FOB, or at the respawn zones, or what have you, to provide any support that he's able to provide to us, especially in the case of any emergencies. Because for many of us who are traveling, like if I were to tell you who my emergency contact is, it's likely going to be my spouse. And I mean, for someone like Frosty, it might be, one of his good friends or someone. But those people are back in your home country, especially for us, right? For us who's traveling out of the United States, if I sustained an injury or something like that and I needed immediate medical attention, like I would want my spouse to know, but she's not able to help me in that immediate situation. We need someone who's on the ground, able to make some decisions if they need to be made, or to contact the right people if they need to be contacted, and so on. And so Todd and Chaz, our Discord moderator, or one of our Discord moderators, I should say, are going to be doing that as well, because they are going to physically be there, and they are, responsible individuals who can gather up our sort of emergency contact information and any other medical information that we need to share, and they can be that point of coordination. So we're not taking on any additional risk that we need to, or that people don't have to sort of rely on other people, etc. Like we can rely on ourselves for support, which is going to be awesome. I think that for me, it brings me a lot of peace of mind to know that those guys are going to be able to, if anything does happen, not that I expect that, but you sort of want to plan for it. And I would rather have someone on the ground who can support us doing that than, have, me call my wife and say, hey, so this is what happened. And she's going to say, well, I can't do anything for you here. Well, so that I think is going to be really great. So we're organizing that sort of thing. And as well, working with Todd and, everybody else, figuring out what do we want to do socially, because this is not just about Ironhorse. Like, yes, of course it's about Ironhorse and we're there to play the game, but a huge part of this is meeting all of you who are the members of the Foreign Legion who want to travel to do this together and get to know each other and, shake your hands and have a burger with you or whatever it is that we're going to do. That's a huge, huge part of it. We've created together this international community. And it's unfortunate that, more people from around the world can come, which it's totally understandable because it's so expensive. But hopefully we get to do more of these kinds of things where we can actually engage as people and sort of get to know each other as airsofters and say, wow, like we're all coming from different places with different background, different age, different creed, everything else. And yet we all have this amazing hobby together. I remember we've said this before, when we talked to Rob from Gunfather Milsim, airsoft is a big tent. Well, going to Ironhorse is going to be a really good way for me to experience just how big that tent actually is in person. I've spoken to so many of you on the podcast, but seeing it with my own eyes is going to be very, very special. So we're making sure that we're organizing as much of that. We don't know really what those social activities are going to look like. Obviously, a cookout, barbecue, whatever you might want to call it, is a staple for me. Like, I mean, eating, all social activities happen around eating. But hopefully we might be able to even record a podcast while we're down there. That would be really sweet. And just really have a good time and just get to relax as well and enjoy each other's company a little bit. So that's something that we are really, really looking forward to. One of the things I also wanted to address, and one of the things that was sort of on our mind when we initially made the pivot from UFS, rest in peace, to Civilian Defense Force, was that, well, being civilian, that might not seem as serious or, hardcore, especially if we're traveling so far to play that kind of event. I want to dress the part. But fundamentally, it actually doesn't change a whole lot for us for a bunch of different reasons. So, number one, as a civilian on the Civilian Defense Force, you have to wear like solid colors. So you can't wear camo. You also can't wear green because that's the cost color. And you can't wear red because that's the AMS like safety color. But any other color is okay. And that includes tan, and it includes black. Although I don't know why you'd want to wear black in the middle of summer, but different conversation. But it includes tan, it includes black, it includes gray, whatever you want, right? Orange, yellow, blue, it doesn't matter, right? As long as it's not green or red, it's good. And we've confirmed that with the organizers. So for our money, actually, in terms of kit, it doesn't really change a whole lot. So I can still wear the 10 tactical cry cut replica pants, the shadow tactical pants that I bought. I can still wear those because they're flat tan. They're not a camo color. I'm really glad I didn't buy a DCU set, and we stuck with that. And then in terms of the tops that we can wear, again, it can be any color. So it could be blue, it could be brown, black, gray, whatever we want. And that can be really much more comfortable, right? So there's lots of shirts that I have, for example, for running that are long sleeve that are meant to be worn in the sun. They're, we call them like sun shirts or whatever. They have an SPF factor, but they're also meant to be worn in the heat, so they moisture wick really well. That would be probably really great to wear. I have one that's pale blue. I could pick up another one that's navy. I could pick up one that's yellow. All of that would be fine. So it actually opens up a lot of options in that regard. Your face covering has to match sort of the rest of your overall colors, and it can't be green or camo or red. So that part kind of sucks. So I have two Delta mics, and one is Woodland and the other one is M90 because that's the best camo. And as a consequence of that, I'm either going to have to wrap my Delta mic in like a tan face wrap, which probably is going to be pretty heavy, and I will probably want to avoid doing that. So quite likely we'll do like a group order again. With maybe for a Delta mic or something like that I can pick up in tan or another color. So that's something that I need to consider. And then the other part is your helmet. I want to wear a helmet because I want to wear my GoPro and I want to have a battery on it, etc. And well, you can just do that too, as long as it's not like a camouflage pattern. So I'm going to pick up a tan head cover or tan scrim or whatever, and that'll be that. That'll be good. We briefly toyed with the idea of doing other stuff, and there's lots of conversations that are going on in our Ironhorse prep channel on the Discord where we're talking about potential kits. So some people are saying, well, we could wear like Aloha Hawaiian shirts, which I think lots of people are going to do just in general on CDF. So if we're trying to be unique, that's probably not going to be the way to go. I don't have any issue with that. It's just not what I would prefer to do. If that's what the group wants to do, then I'll break out my non-green Hawaiian shirt, and that'll be that. Also briefly toyed with the idea of doing like a SWAT blue, so like a LAPD SWAT, like the classic navy blue uniform, and that could go hard too. And that would be pretty cool. Also toying around with the idea of like PMCs from like movies like 13 Hours or something like that, looking at like jeans and like like a tan top or like tan bottoms and the blue top and a plate carrier. Although I'm not going to be wearing a plate carrier, it'll be my microfight chest rig. But regardless, so there's a lot of different options, and the fact that it's civilian clothing actually makes it a lot easier in many respects, as I've said before. In terms of the kit, my kit, well, your gear color doesn't matter at AMS, and it never has, so none of that is changing. So I'm still going to be wearing, as I mentioned, my microfight as well as my tan hydration bladder that I'm going to have on my back. Probably not going to bother with the sidearm. I may or may not wear a belt, depending. So I do carry mags on my belt, but at Ironhorse, at AMS games, you're only allowed 6+1 in the replica. So fundamentally, my kit would allow me to carry 8. So I'm not really sure if the belt will be required. The only thing that I carry my belt else I carry on my belt is my magnet dump pouch. I really enjoy having that a net dump pouch because it's very light. It doesn't get in the way like a traditional Cordura dump pouch, and it gives me an option to throw my mags if I'm playing in a swampy environment. I don't think that's going to be the case at Ironhorse, so not really sure if it'll be essential, but do play that by ear. Fundamentally, not having a belt means I don't have to wear suspenders on my pants, so I can just wear like a light belt, and that'll be to keep my pants up basically, and that'll be great. So that still needs to be determined. And then finally, we need to figure out whether or not I'm going to be using an HPA replica or an AEG. That's going to be down to the people who are lending me the replicas. You know who you are. We've had some conversations about it. And we'll see sort of what's what on that front. So all that, great. The only real thing that's left for me to figure out for my kit, aside from like the clothing and stuff, which is, I think, a new factor, is just my iPro. So I'm in the middle right now of transitioning between different types of iPro. I have my V12 Advancers. They're basically on the way out. Like, this is the last frame that I have. It's falling apart. So I've ordered some UVEX. I've ordered some Pyramex. I've ordered another brand. 3M, just safety goggles. Or safety glasses, I should say. And I want to try them out and see what the fogging is like. All of them have a gasket. Just want to see what works best and go from there. So that's really what the kit is looking like. And I'm not really concerned about what the kit is going to be like. One of the things that we need to figure out too is like supplies. So like BBs and like grenades, stuff like that. We'll probably be doing a larger group order. I believe we are. There's one of our former podcast guests, Matt Kruger from Big Red Airsoft. I think he's going to be in attendance as well. So hopefully we'll be able to place an order with him and have all the stuff that we need to get down there. I would like not to travel with BBs because it's additional weight for no reason. It's easier for us to just buy it down there. And of course, pyro is not really available here. And even if it was, traveling with it would be impossible. So it's just better for us to buy it down there. So that's sort of where we're looking. And when it comes to CDEV as the final point, I mean, still the same group of players. It's still the same CO. It might even be a platoon leader that we're familiar with as well. Don't really know yet. But it doesn't really change a whole lot. So initially I was like, oh, this kind of sucks, man. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, actually, this is fine, right? We're going. It would have been great for us to all wear DCU and match. Like that would have been cool. But you know what? That's sort of the name of the game. We're going to look cool regardless. We're going to have some Foreign Legion shirts made up. They're available actually for purchase. There's a sale. There was a sale last week. There likely will be another sale on Threadless before the event. So look out for those as well. Lastly, I wanted to touch on sort of my training block. So, like I know lots of people play airsoft and they don't sort of train physically before an event like that. You will know listening to me that I think training is very important, and especially when we're going to a different environment. So people need to understand the realities of where, John and I live. When we say that we live somewhere that is like cold, like it's not super, super cold. Like if I think about this winter, we didn't really have many sub -15 Celsius days, right? So it's acceptable. The thing is, it's also not super warm, and it doesn't warm up really until much later in the year. So at time of recording, we're about halfway through March, and like it's been around 0 degrees Celsius for the last week. It's -1, +1, -2, 0, like those kinds of temperatures, and it's gonna stay like that probably for weeks and weeks. So in the rest of Canada right now, it's been 16 degrees Celsius, I think, recently in Toronto, which is crazy. But there it is. We don't get those kinds of temperatures here. It's going to stay single digits probably for another month and a half, maybe two, all the way into May. That makes it very, very difficult for players like myself and John to do any amount of heat training, heat acclimation, right? So when we go down to Ironhorse at the end of June, we may have had 2 weeks of warmer weather. And by warmer weather, I mean like 20 degrees to 25 degrees on the outside, right? 25 degrees Celsius is not that hot. So 25 degrees Celsius, I believe, is like 85 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. It's not really that warm. 85, maybe 90 degrees. I'm not exactly sure. I'm really bad at the conversion, but it's somewhere in that range. When we go to Georgia, it likely will be substantially higher than that. It could be well into the 90s, easily hundreds Fahrenheit. So we're talking about 30, 35 degrees Celsius plus humidity. Those are not temperatures that we are accustomed to here in Newfoundland, and it's essentially impossible for us to train outside, to train our bodies to acclimate to that kind of heat. Unless something happens and we get like a crazy heat wave in June where we get 2 weeks of really, really hot weather, it's unlikely that's going to happen. And to give you an example of how this works out in reality, last year, I trained for a 10-mile road race, 16-kilometer road race from April all the way to the race date, which was in the middle of June. And all of my training up until the race was done in like 14 to 18 degree weather Celsius, right? 14 to 18 Celsius. The day of the race, which was, I think, like the 21st or 22nd of June, it was the hottest day of the year so far, and temperatures went up to like 24 degrees with humidity. Well, all of the training that I had done that year, hopefully to be able to run that race in under 80 minutes, so an hour and 20 minutes, all that went out the window by the 6th kilometer because I was completely dead from the heat. You look at the other runners, I saw about 12 people heat casualty on the side of the road being helped by EMS, by being helped by a police officer or a volunteer or something like that, because it was so hot compared to all of the rest of our training cycle. So this is a pretty long lead up, but this is to say that I take the dangers of heat and heat stroke very, very seriously because I understand fundamentally what that feels like from a running perspective. And so heat training is going to be a huge part of the lead up to Ironhorse. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, we can't do that outside because it's not hot enough. So what do you do? Well, um, the best method that you can do, or one of the best methods that you can do for heat training, is by using a sauna, which I don't actually have a sauna, or a pop-up sort of like steam sauna, which is a little bit, not as good as like a full-blown sauna, not as hot as a full-blown sauna, but it'll do. And then finally, just making your way down to like a really hot bath and a really hot shower. And so the method of that is you go for a moderate intensity exercise. So it could be like a 35-minute run or something that gets your blood pumping really, really well. Like you get a good sweat on, and once you have that sweat on, you immediately immerse yourself in heat. So for me, I'm going to be purchasing sort of a pop-up sauna that I can use in my house, like a small steam unit, something like that goes up to 120 or 130 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. So going for my run and then immediately getting in the sauna for 20 minutes and working my way up. And doing that at the very least the 2 weeks leading up to Ironhorse. That will put us in the absolute best position so that we will be acclimatized to the heat. And what that will do for us is that it'll increase our sweat response. We'll be a lot more accustomed to physically working our bodies in hot environments. And in combination with hydration, nutrition, and just being smart, I foresee that this will help us avoid any sort of heat casualty. So this is something that I take very, very seriously. And for those of us, anyone who's coming from Canada who hasn't had hot temperatures in the 2 weeks leading up to the event is something that I would highly recommend. So whether that is, getting into a sauna at the gym, if you have access to one, which is awesome. If not, having a pop-up sauna at home, or even just drawing a really hot bath and then getting into that hot bath at least up to your neck, and then keeping it hot throughout like 20 minutes or something like that to really help your body acclimatize to that heat. This kind of thing can be sort of hazardous if you're not accustomed to it, so you want to take it easy, especially at the start if you've never done anything like this before, and ease into it. But the last 2 weeks before you actually for us, like we're going to travel, we're going to be there for a while before Ironhorse, but for the last 2 weeks, we will be doing our absolute best to get acclimatized to that heat, so that we don't, not die certainly, but don't heat cast. We want to make sure we have a good time, that we're set up to do that as best as we can. That's one thing. The second thing is, of course, strength and conditioning. So strength and conditioning is something that I do currently. I think it's something that is important to me, but that does mean making sure that I am going on much longer runs. Thankfully, at the end of May, myself and Chris Lodge from our team are going to be running a Backyard Ultra. A Backyard Ultra is an ultra endurance event where you run 6.7 kilometers every hour on the hour, and you just keep doing that until nobody is left. And the last person who is left wins, and everybody else loses. It's a kind of a brutal race designed by the guy who designed the Barkley Marathon. You can Google that if you want to learn more about it. But this is the kind of event where we're going to be pushing ourselves to a limit, where the first lap is going to be fine, the second lap is going to be fine, but then once we reach lap 7, 8, 9, 10, that we'll have been going for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. It's going to get pretty exhausting, but that is going to be really, really good training for Ironhorse because, well, quite frankly, Ironhorse physically is not going to be as hard as that. And so if I'm able to do this Backyard Ultra, if I'm able to do really well, I've got some goals in mind. That's going to set me up really well for making sure that I can have the endurance that I need to at Ironhorse. The strength part of that too is super important, right? Having strong limbs supports you, prevents you from, or helps you prevent sort of any minor injuries, puts you in the best position to recover if anything does happen. If you think about rolling your ankle or whatever. Well, if your legs are really strong and your ankles are strong, sometimes you can just roll and be like, "Yep, no big deal." Obviously, an accident is an accident. Trauma is trauma. Um, but if you're stronger, then you can sort of put put the odds in your favor, stack the odds in your favor, which is what I'm kind of going to be doing with the strength and conditioning. So strengthening my arms, strengthening my legs, strengthening my back, my core, everything to just put myself in the best possible shape, so that that is another thing at Ironhorse, which is not a factor. Finally, personal skills. So there's very little that we can do to start prepping, coordinating with people who we've never played airsoft with. So we do have some plans in mind around doing some training for communication. I know that just today, actually, Matt and Jordan were playing Helldivers 2 together, and Jordan was running a clinic on good communication skills. So you can get accustomed to that by well, Helldivers is certainly freedom is a thing, and you definitely want to go after it in Helldivers. But I digress. I think any game, whether it's like Ready or Not, whether it's Arma, anything like that, is an opportunity to communicate with other people and to focus on those positive communication skills. The ABCs of communication we've talked about before. But then the personal skills, right? So I've been, honestly, I've been sort of negligent on my ready ups this year. It's not something I've been putting a lot of focus on. I've had a couple injuries and I've been really focusing on other areas. So as I lead into Ironhorse, I'm going to be picking that up again, making sure I'm doing my ready ups every week, making sure that I'm practicing my reloads, making sure that I'm making sure that my gear is fitting well, things are working well for me, and then when airsoft actually picks up again, hopefully in April, but it could be as late as May, then we'll have an opportunity for myself and John to really get back out there, to put the gear through its paces, wear the gear we're going to wear there here at Frontline, see how it works out, see what kind of things might need to be changed, any sort of issues that we have with that. And so that really is going to be the lead up to Ironhorse. I have, I'm probably going to stop playing more serious airsoft in the couple of weeks before Ironhorse, just to make sure that I don't injure myself unnecessarily. I've talked about this before. I keep doing that accidentally. I'm not doing it on purpose, but like it's something that it keeps happening, and I don't want it to keep happening. So before Ironhorse, I'm probably going to take it easy on the airsoft, run a couple of games, and just sort of make sure that I don't put myself needlessly at risk, so that I don't show up with a torn ankle or anything like that to Ironhorse, because that would be the last thing that we want to do. So that's what the workup, the training block is going to look like. That might seem like a lot. It might seem unnecessary, but fundamentally, it's all about making sure that all of the things that I can remove as potential factors to being a detriment to our experience, I'm removing. So whether that's my strength conditioning, whether that's heat training, whether that's my personal skills, all of that needs to be locked in so that I don't have to worry about any of that. I can just focus on what's immediately in front of us at the game, absorbing as much as I can. So we will be going to every single briefing that we can. We're going to learn as much as we can, shake as many hands as we can as well to work with our command structure, our cadre, etc. But I want to be like a sponge and absorb as much as I can, and at the same time, making sure that I'm doing stuff that is going to be interesting for you guys, because part of this is also creating content. Like I want to create videos about the experiences at Ironhorse. I want to showcase how some of the things that I've done in sort of my training, whether it's the training block, the conditioning, etc., or the airsoft skills, how is that actually panning out at this AMS? Like how did all of that prepare me for the event? Was it worth my time? What are the things that ultimately maybe I spent too much time on, didn't weren't a factor? What are other things I should have spent time on but didn't? And then do a video about the event itself and talk about what happened on the field, what were we doing, where were we, all this kind of stuff. And that's going to be pretty awesome. So the more I can remove as factors, we talk about this when it comes to the muscle memory aspect, right? The less you're thinking about the stuff about your person, the more you can think about what's going on out there. Same exact concept. I want to make sure everything is dialed so that we can really focus on what's going on in the field and focus on the amazing people we're going to be with, focus on our teammates, and what we're doing, just kicking ass, right? That's ultimately what we're going to be doing when we're out there. I'm really hoping that we are able to be as effective as I know we can be, as entrepreneurial, as go getter as I know we can be, all while basically just having a smile, having a laugh, carrying on with everybody, and just bringing the spirit of positivity about the Foreign Legion, which is what we're all about, bringing that to the game and making sure that everybody around us has the best possible time. So that's really my wrap up of what the Iron Horse prep is gonna look like. We're locked in now. Like I said at the start, we have our tickets. The 21 people who are going, myself included, we have our confirmed tickets. This is happening, right? Barring some sort of unforeseen event, which I don't even want to talk about. This is happening. We're going to meet some amazing people down there. We're going to kick ass. We're going to have a great time. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. So, thanks so much for listening. As we continue to get closer, we'll likely have more updates. We'll talk to some of the people who are coming with us as well. Probably showcase some of our kits and some of the decisions that we're making. But yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me rant about Iron Horse. Obviously, I'm very excited. But yeah, that's all I've got for you. So until next time, I hope you have a great week and we'll talk to you soon.